In a solemn setting in the heart of the U.S. Capitol, Washington, D.C., a unique showcase of Vietnamese culture is being held for the first time. Hao Dong, a mother goddess worship ritual at the Smithsonian's National Museum of Asian Art. The Vietnamese Mid-Autumn Festival at the Eastern Market, and a traditional Vietnamese wedding performed at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. Behind this unique showcase are two individuals with particular backstories. Erin Phung Steinhauer, a Vietnamese-American woman longing for her homeland, and Peter Steinhauer, an American photographer who considers Vietnam his homeland. For over 20 years, Peter and Erin have nurtured this special way of promoting Vietnamese culture, driven by their desire to present a new perspective on Vietnam and its rich heritage. Thanks to their special mission, thousands of Vietnamese and American people have engaged in dozens of authentic Vietnamese cultural events, spanning performing arts, cuisine, literature, film, and fine arts.
Preserving the true essence of Vietnamese culture and bringing it to some of the most reputable centers of the world, Vietnam society has been able to leverage art in all its forms to rebuild and reconnect people, and more importantly, encourage the young generation abroad to be proud of their heritage. Behind this mission is Peter and Erin Steinhauer, a couple with a special love for Vietnamese culture and the unique love story themselves. What is that and how do they do it? We'll try to find the answers to those questions in Talk Vietnam episode today. First of all, thank you so much, Erin and Peter, for joining us on Talk Vietnam.
It's our pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Why do you think that the Vietnamese heritage and culture has the power to rebuild and reconnect people?
Sure. Well, we believe that art and culture is the heartbeat of a society, it's the soul of a country. And it has the ability to facilitate dialogue. It has the ability to build trust among people and also to raise awareness and appreciation and understanding between people. And Vietnamese art and culture has a rich heritage of 4,000 years. So we have many things that we could do and use to promote Vietnam to the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you think, Peter?
Yeah, I think, culture is from, every country has its own background and its own culture. And as you go along and as time passes and so on and certain events take place, it can tend to, at times people forget about culture and they will focus on something else. And in our case, how we're trying to preserve this through preserve the talk and remembrance of Vietnamese culture for Vietnamese by bringing in and having events that just brings back culture to the forefront, and so people can remember that.
A lot of people here, second, third generation Vietnamese, who really don't know their culture and their roots. We felt that we were in the right position to be able to do that. And we just thought the timing is right now to use all of the resources that we have to make it possible. We see the power of art and culture in changing people's perception from Vietnam, of a place that is foreign, is unknown to them, to a place that is warm, that we knew of when, particularly me growing up in Vietnam, knowing how wonderful it is. I wanted to bring that to the younger generation in particular here.
Right. So do you think that is there a disconnection to Vietnamese culture and heritage among the young Vietnamese people, Vietnamese diaspora here?
Absolutely, absolutely. Now that we've been here for 50 years, there are many people who were born here, the second generation and even third generation, and they really have very little knowledge of their own culture. Unless they grew up in a Vietnamese community in the US, they would not have learned about our culture at all. And many of them, even if they grew up in the Vietnamese culture, when you go through school and when you go through life here, there isn't many opportunities for them to be Vietnamese. And so there's a huge disconnect. Even if some of them want to get to know their culture, there's very little opportunities for them to do so.
In 2022, a traditional 19th century Vietnamese wedding was brought to life on the Kennedy Center stage for the first time. All the Vietnamese American cast members beamed proudly on stage during the event. Being part of such a significant Vietnamese cultural representation filled them with pride and a deep connection to their home country. In 2024, the Smithsonian's Asian Art Museum debuted the Hao Dong Ritual. A diverse overseas Vietnamese and international audience were captivated by this performance depicting Vietnam's mother goddess worship, recognized by UNESCO as an intangible cultural heritage of humanity.
This is my first time being introduced to any type of performance like this. The garments were beautiful. It was definitely trance-like, something that I've never seen, and it was.
As a Vietnamese American born in America, it's really nice for me to see these performances and learn more about my roots. And one day I want to go back to Vietnam and stay for a couple of years.
Traditional weddings and the Hao Dong Ritual are integral cultural components of the annual Vietnam Week organized by the Vietnam Society. With a steadfast belief in the unifying power of culture and art, Peter and Aaron dedicated themselves tirelessly to cultivating the Vietnam Society as a vital bridge of culture and art between Vietnam and the United States.
Anh Sơn đây là tìm ca sĩ à?
Anh tìm một người.
Vietnamese-themed movies that have clinched international awards, candid literary dialogues, and vibrant showcases of both traditional and contemporary Vietnamese culture have captured the spotlight of the American media.
This place is the capital of the United States, and also there is all nations in the world are revealing here. So I think this is a perfect setting, and then also Vietnam Society, they can bring their real Vietnam top-notch thing. I think that's the different from other organizations.
What prompted you to set up Vietnam Society?
22 years ago, when we met, she pulled me back over to the U.S. for a year and a half, and I was here, and we went to the Smithsonian when they had at that time they had an Iranian film festival, and we went to it. And after the first film that we saw that one evening, we came out and we both were like, we need to do something on Vietnamese film. That would be great one day to have a Vietnamese film festival.
You know, it's also within our heart of pride for our country that we wanted to do this, because we walk around Washington, D.C., and there's so much emphasis on, like Peter said, Chinese art or Indian art or, you know, Japanese art, that we just thought, where's Vietnamese art? And we just thought Vietnam has equally beautiful art and culture, or even better. And yet we're nowhere to be seen. If you go to the museums here, you don't really see Vietnamese art. And even performing art like dance and music, oftentimes it is featured in, the Kennedy Center, Chinese art or Chinese music or dance, or even Russian. And so we thought it is time for us to elevate our art and culture to this high platform so that we can all, as Vietnamese, be proud of who we are.
Due to her deep-rooted love and pride in Vietnamese culture, Erin Phương is always meticulous in selecting Vietnamese cultural activities to introduce to America. This year marked the first time a traditional Vietnamese Mid-Autumn Festival was staged at the Eastern Market, a 150-year-old market in the heart of Washington, D.C.
Trong cái văn hóa của người Việt Nam, thì cái lễ Trung Thu, cái ngày Tết Trung Thu này là ngày Tết của thiếu nhi, để dành những cái gì tốt đẹp nhất và những lời nguyện chúc tốt nhất cho các bé.
Chúng tôi muốn làm chính xác tới nỗi mà chúng tôi đem những cái lồng đèn làm ở Việt Nam để đem sang đây. Chúng tôi mua hơn 1.000 cái lồng đèn. Chúng tôi cũng dạy những người ở đây làm tiến sĩ giấy. Chúng tôi muốn dạy những trẻ em trân trọng học vấn của nền văn hóa Việt Nam.
I would say I never knew about these, but I have some idea about culture and things like that. It's always great to have experience of other different cultures.
I've been to Vietnamese restaurants and Vietnamese grocery stores, but I've never seen anything like this with all the lanterns and everybody dressed up. It's really nice.
So they wear áo dài all the time. For Tet, they'll wear an áo dài or weddings. I think it's great, and they love doing it too.
Oh, it's amazing. To have an event of this scale here in the district is something we're very proud of. Exploring so many different facets of Vietnamese culture here in the United States.
Vietnam society. It has been a journey of 20 years. Yes. So what are the challenges that you've been facing, or the opportunities that you realized during that journey?
Well, it's an enormous task to start Vietnam society, because we have big visions and we wanted to do many things. We wanted it to be different also. Here in the US, there's been many other organizations that have promoted Vietnamese art and culture, but over the last 50 years, it's been the kind of art that is frozen in time. What I mean by that is people, depending on when they came to the US, that's what they know of Vietnamese art at that time. So if you go to events in the Vietnamese communities today, you'll see that it's the same kind of performances that's been practiced for the last 50 years. Right. What we wanted to do was to elevate that and to really show things that are modern about Vietnam, but also real accurate depiction of our culture from the last 3,000 years. And so what that meant was we needed experts and people from Vietnam to come over and to present today's art and today's culture, but also experts who studied about Vietnamese culture from 2,000 years ago. So it's a big vision and very ambitious. And therefore, one of our challenges was to really build up the support network of people in Vietnam and people here in order to make that a reality. Specifically, the artists and all the people who perform. And then second is the support from the community itself. The Vietnamese American community here, also in Vietnam. And also then funding, that's a big part as well. How do we bring all of these people over from Vietnam? How do we even, just as simple as getting visas for them to come over? That's also a big challenge. So that's why it took us 20 years to put together the different pieces in order to make that work.
What made you so determined to keep doing it, to overcome all of the challenges?
I think it was simply we saw the need for it. And living here, or actually having the experience of living there for so long and working basically for both of us over the last 25 and 30 years. And then coming here and seeing nothing, everything, as you, in the courses in universities that are taught, it's always about the war. And anything you see outside, it's you don't see modern day Vietnam film festivals, or any, very rare do you see just issues like that. So that's where we just came, we saw the missing piece that it was needed here. And we saw Japan Society, there's Asia Society, there's the Korea Society, and so we wanted to create this, to bring this to the forefront.
I think changing perception is one of the most challenging tasks. It's not easy because it's so abstract. And how do you change people's perception? I think maybe you have a very special way to do it. So can you share more about it?
Sure. It is hard to change perception, but it is easy with food. It is easy with beautiful music. It's easy with film. I think that you can try to change people's perception by through a debate and talking with them. But if you actually show them what thịt kho tastes like, or a beautiful film. Last year we showed the film Em và Trịnh here, and people really loved it, both Americans as well as Vietnamese. Even the ambassador from Brunei to the U.S., he and his wife came to see the film and said they want to bring that film to show in Brunei. It's like Peter said, little by little, but it's really about persistency and keep doing it year after year, and to show that we are going to keep producing high quality programming, and that it's available also for free for people to go. We want to reach as many people as possible. So all of our programs here, anybody could attend at no cost. And I think that will help change. And of course, it's not just in Washington that we are going to do this. We want to be nationwide. So we are partnering with other organizations around the country, Vietnamese organizations, so that when we bring programs to the US, that we are also working with people in California or in Texas or in Oregon to bring the artists to those places as well.
As a history major focusing on Asian historical issues, Aiden has helped the Vietnam Society research traditional and modern cultural topics to add depth to Vietnam Week's activities. This work has gradually changed his perception of his home country.
Vietnam Society helps me bringing out fine arts and culture, literature, media. All those things help me understand myself, my memory, my ancestors. Has helped me boost a sense of Vietnamese culture for myself and for others.
In the Vietnamese community in the US, young people of Vietnamese descent are primarily second and third generation. Geographic distance and generational gaps have limited their opportunities to connect with their roots. However, with Vietnamese blood flowing within them, they still enthusiastically seek ways to connect with their homeland and heritage.
think a very effective way of healing those bullets, right, after the damage has been cleaned up, is this fine art and culture, right? Literature, music, film, right? Those things can sort of heal the wounds of the soul, right, that linger after wounds of the war.
With my Vietnamese heritage, most importantly, it connects me to my mom. She was the most exceptional person, and I want to make her proud. And I feel so special that she was my mom. And so I think about her all the time when I'm at Vietnam Society, and this is my way of staying in touch with my roots and being intentional and hoping, that I don't lose parts of it, parts of my culture. I hope my roots only grow stronger.
The Vietnam Society is a gathering place for those with a soft spot for Vietnamese culture and for people of Vietnamese descent living abroad to join together and shoulder the mission of promoting Vietnamese culture to the world. This cultural mission is nurtured and inspired by Erin Phung's family.
Trong lòng tôi rất là tự hào về gia đình của mình. Mẹ của tôi cũng dạy tôi về cái quan trọng của gia đình, đó là văn hóa Việt Nam, phải gần gũi nhau để giúp lẫn nhau. Tôi khi nào cũng nói là một cây làm chẳng nên non, ba cây chụm lại nên hòn núi cao. Thì tôi cứ nghĩ về như vậy, và bây giờ sau 40 năm sau thì mình cũng làm như vậy, mình cũng giúp đỡ nhau như vậy. Cho nên cái đó là công sức của nguyên gia đình, chứ không phải là cá nhân tôi.
And now, Vietnamese culture and heritage are passed down to the next generations daily.
Cố gắng học nè con. Ở Việt Nam mình nghèo á, nên có cái ca dao như vậy ở Việt Nam mình á là thương người tất tả ngược xuôi, thương người lỡ bước, thương người bơ vơ, thương người ôm dắt trẻ thơ, thương người tuổi tác già nua bằng hàng. Con đi đâu cũng thấy những người đó, con thương giúp đỡ cho người ta đó. Ngoại biết con người tốt nên ngoại cũng yên tâm. I love you.
So Erin, can you tell us more about your family and the journey of you coming from Vietnam to the United States?
Sure. Well, my parents had 12 children, 6 boys and 6 girls, a big family. We were all born in Vietnam. And in 1975, my parents started to send children to the U.S.
Coming to the U.S. when you were 9 years old, so how did you navigate through all of the cultural differences and, language barrier and everything?
Well, it was very, very difficult because during that time, there was just so much misunderstanding about Vietnam and about Asia. I had to deal with a lot of discrimination, a lot of bullying in school, and which actually made me turn away from my culture a little bit, after a while. So there was a period of time when it was easier to not be Vietnamese. When I was younger, in high school, I continued to use my Vietnamese name Phương, and I kept trying to get people to say Phương or even Phong, right? If that's easier. But one of my teachers kept calling me pond, which is just a pond of water. And I just hated it so much. I hated everything about, not being understood and also being looked down upon because of my Vietnamese name and my Vietnamese heritage, that I just said, just call me Erin from now on. And that's how Erin came to be. And of course, in business also, it's easier to have a name that people can easily recognize and pronounce rather than people just having an awkward time trying to repeat your name. And so for me, it was just easier to just be okay being Asian, you know, and then after a while, it's okay to be American generally and blend in so that I can really achieve what I want to achieve in my career, in my ambition, without having to just pause and try to explain about my culture.
So since when you realized that your Vietnamese cultural identity is actually a unique feature that you should embrace?
It's interesting, it wasn't until much later. I actually went to Vietnam to do a lot of work. After I graduated from university, I went to Vietnam on many different business delegations and business trips. At one point, I went to Vietnam once every other month from Washington, D.C. For different companies, even for the U.S. government. But when I went to Vietnam, I still felt American. I still didn't feel so connected with my roots because I had a mission. I had, a project that I had to do. So I would go in, I accomplish my work, and then I leave. So it was very interesting. I would taste the food, I would see Vietnam, but it didn't really touch my heart.
Right, so it was all work orientation.
It was all work oriented. It wasn't later until the US and Vietnam celebrated the normalization of the bilateral relationship that they organized an art exhibition that traveled around the US and started in Washington, D.C. And I attended that exhibition and I saw many beautiful art, Vietnamese fine art in that exhibition that touched my heart. But the piece that really touched my heart was a black and white photograph of a woman carrying a baby, her baby, walking across a bridge. And when I looked at that photograph, it reminded me of my mother carrying her children across the bridge of life. And it just brought back so much of my memories of Vietnam and reminded me of my own roots and connected me very deeply. So that was the moment. And then, of course, I look and I try to see who took this photograph that moved me so much. And I was expecting a Vietnamese name because all the artists there were Vietnamese. But then I saw Peter Steinhauer took this photograph. And then after that, it took me a long time to send emails out to all my friends to try to find the photographer. And it turned out that it was this Peter Steinhauer who later became my husband.
Yeah, amazing story. That's how Peter came into your life.
Yes.
So now I want to turn to Peter and ask about the photo that brought you into Aaron's life. Is it this one?
It's that one right there. It's actually on the wall right behind us.
Yes.
That is on our wall. Actually, that's in Son La province. That was in 1995. And I was traveling around and really a very rural road, but I stopped right where I am in this photograph and I looked down, I saw this bridge. There's a village just off to the side. And so I stopped, and of course at this time too, especially in Son La, there was very rarely did you see a white guy, driving around, particularly a young one on a motorbike. And I had long blonde hair, it was all pulled back to here. And I stopped with my assistants and I wanted to just make a photograph of this bridge. And this woman started coming across the bridge as I was photographing. And she stopped in the middle. I'm probably, 100 meters away from her. And stopped just for one frame. Actually, a second frame, she's actually moving, but I got one frame of her. She's standing there with her holding a child. And she's a black Thai minority. And so I got one photograph, and this is the one that I chose out of all of them that I had made.
Aaron couldn't have imagined Peter's deep-seated connection to Vietnam stemmed from his father, Peter Steinhauer Sr. The love for Vietnam and its people have been passed down between Americans. Peter Sr. served as a maxillofacial surgeon at a field hospital in Da Nang from 1966 to 1968, tasked with treating American soldiers and local civilians wounded by the conflict. Unlike many American soldiers who bore the scars of war, Peter Sr. didn't carry painful memories from his time in Vietnam. Instead, he harbored a deep desire to return to the country whenever possible. After his return to America, the greatest gifts he brought back from Vietnam to ultimately share with his children and grandchildren were photos conveying stories about Vietnam and its people.
And these are some of the photos of the Sitmoys, a very unhappy and deformed young lady into this beautiful, smiling little Vietnamese girl here.
It was like a really special time, and it was like a big treat. You know, we'd get our pillows and blankets, and it was just really exciting to see these images because I was transported into a new world and some place that was very foreign to me.
He did become more and more interested in the country, although he had never been there.
6 years before the normalization of Vietnam-U.S. relations, Peter Sr. became one of the earliest American veterans to return to Vietnam. Initially, he went as a member of a United States delegation and later as a part of a non-governmental organization he co-founded, Friendship Bridge. The initiative aims to provide medical equipment for hospitals in Vietnam and facilitate the training of Vietnamese doctors in the United States. Over the course of 25 years, dedicated to maintaining this organization, he returned to Vietnam more than 30 times, often accompanied by his children.
Went back to Vietnam, my wife and I, on our second trip back, we took Peter with us for 2 weeks. And he ended up staying for 7 years and as a photographer.
Vietnam to me is, it's who I am. It's part of who I am. I've grown up with Vietnam my entire life. Then I'm actually living in Vietnam for the first time, and I felt so completely at home.
Love for Vietnam gradually seeped into Peter during the 12 years he lived here and over 30 years traveling back and forth between the two countries. During his exciting and passionate journeys, he took thousands of photos of Vietnam and found the destiny of his life.
I knew I had something special. It was just a really special image, and it turns out later, that's the image that my wife saw that moved her, and she ended up contacting me. I think she sees Vietnam and sees the culture, sees the landscapes within my work that she grew up hearing about day by day, seeing how much I knew about Vietnam and how, you know, she didn't know the names of the provinces, whereas I have. I've been in every province in the country. It's surprising for her. She really loved that, and I find it special. It's special.
So, wow, one photo that brought two people together. So you guys must share something in common.
Peter experienced so much of Vietnam that I didn't have because he learned about modern-day Vietnam. My experiences was of a child, and so when he shares stories about his life in Vietnam, it really intrigued me. We have mutual respect. For me to know that his love for Vietnam matched mine also, and that we had a similar mission, which is to, keep sharing what we are privileged to know about Vietnamese culture to the world. You know, every chance that we get, we talk about how amazing Vietnam is. And, you know, when you have that similar mission, it's easier to just kind of, you know, go through life together.
Right. So what brought you to Vietnam in that very early day, 1993, even before normalization?
I have a very large background with Vietnam since I can remember being a child. You know, my father was there during the war as a doctor, and then when he came back, we learned about Vietnam through his slides, his snapshots that he made while he was there. He was on a base in Da Nang, but he went out to the countryside all the time and just made, you know, photographs. And I grew up with those, having those slideshows in our living room all throughout, you know, every year. And I also gave slideshows throughout school from 3rd grade until I was a senior in high school of these. So Vietnam has always been a part of me. I've always known about it since I can remember. And then, so when I had a chance to, when I finished art school, I had a chance to go to Vietnam. I was going to stay for just 2 months and just make some photographs. And as soon as I landed, I just had felt like this is where I'm supposed to be. I felt totally at home right away, which was in 1993. And so I stayed. And then I continued on my own personal work there. And that just, it just kept driving me to create my work, and my love for Vietnam just grew, which turned into Vietnam Society later on.
Right.
A unique blend of quietude and vibrance characterizes Peter's photography. His subjects often encompass urban architecture, nature, and portraits, with a particular emphasis on Asia, notably Vietnam. His artworks have graced exhibitions in museums across the United States, Singapore, and Hong Kong, China. Moreover, he has been honored with numerous international photography awards, including recognition for his captivating images captured in Vietnam. Peter has published 2 books based on his photography projects in Vietnam. One of them, Enduring Spirit of Vietnam, published in 2007, received the Best Photo Book of the Year award from the American photography magazine Photo District News.
That was nhà thờ Giáo Sú, Lan Mat in Hà Nam province. That was at evening, and when the actual sun was actually going down. So once you can't see the sun, it's actually going down. In photography terms, it's called the magic hour. This beautiful light where the light from bounces up, hits the atmosphere, and it just fills the sky and or the surrounding land. So image, which was great. And in the background, you can see the mountains, and yeah, that was a beautiful shot. I was very lucky with that. I have a photo mast. In English, it's called a pneumatic mast. And there's 8 sections of it, and each one is 1 meter. You put the camera on top, and you pump it up, and the 1 meter sections will go up. So I can put my camera up 8 meters in the air to get the perspective that I want. It's very unique, very, very rare.
Peter always strives to capture perfect moments and frames by roaming every kilometer, regardless of time or terrain. He doesn't hesitate to visit the same location multiple times, experimenting with different times of day to achieve the desired shot.
I think I've gone to Ha Long Bay almost 30 times. Yeah, I think I lost count. This is around my 30th time here. Yeah, this is the most special place for me in all of Vietnam. For my work, I use long exposures a lot. Life is moving. I mean, if you look at the clouds right now, they're going across, the wind is blowing, these flags next to us, I don't know if you can see them in the frame, they're blowing. They're all moving, people are moving, boats are moving, water's moving. And I like to incorporate that in my work since I started photography.
Those special values shine through in every image captured by photographer Peter Steinhauer.
So what about your future plan? Can you share with us?
continue to build up Vietnam society. We have big ambitions that it will reach millions of people here in the US and globally. So Vietnam Week will continue every year. But we also have plans for other programs as well, educational programs and even programs that can take people to Vietnam to experience it firsthand for themselves as well. With the 50th anniversary of the ending of the war, we started a project called Project 5030, which captures photographs of the staff from the two embassies, the US Embassy in Hanoi and the Vietnamese Embassy in Washington, D.C., as well as portraits of individuals who contributed to the reconciliation process. It's a significant anniversary that really marks a historic time, but to us, it's the start of the second half of the century where much more can be done to reconnect people. Over the last 50 years, there's been a lot of success and progress on the economic front as well as political front and security, but from a people to people and communities to community reconnection, there hasn't been as much progress. So we see this to be a big opportunity for much more work around that area.
Mm-hmm. And with the latest update on the Vietnam-US relation, the two countries has upgraded the bilateral relationship into a comprehensive strategic partnership. Yeah. So do you think that it would help pave the way for more effective collaboration in terms of culture, arts and culture?
It's a big step because, it was just a lot of hurt during the war. And then there's a lot of course, after war, there's a lot of trust that needs to be built up together. And so it's just a continuation, and hopefully it just gets more frequent and happens more and just continues steps to build that relationship closer and closer.
Just the fact that Vietnam society has been so accepted by the two countries, governments, as well as people, as well as artists and different companies that we've reached out to. They see art and culture to be a pathway for them to increase understanding about the two countries.
Well, thank you so much for your work. For the past 21 years, your continuous efforts.
Thank you so much, Lena. Thank you.
So after talking to Erin and Peter, I feel so inspired by their love for Vietnamese culture and heritage, using the power of arts and culture to create a bridge of communication, which can also span from one generation to another. This is what Erin and Peter are doing. Their efforts have been recognized, proving through the facts that more and more volunteers are joining hands with them. So let's wish them all the best and also join hands together to make the efforts more collective and sustainable. And it's the power of hearts. Thank you for watching Talk Vietnam, and see you again next time.